Hi, I'm Steve Maller.
And I'm Doreen Maller, and this is Belle.
Welcome to Survival Tips for Unsettled Times. We're here to share our tools, our time, and our skills with you.
We created a series of videos to share. Some of them are based on what we're doing while we're sheltering in place, and we thought you might enjoy them.
Thanks for stopping by. Make sure to hit the thumbs up, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and hit the notification bell so that, I said bell. Hit the notification bell so that you get notified every time we drop a new video. Thanks so much for coming by, and we'll see you soon.
This video is a drawing lesson. One of the ways I've been passing my time during shelter in place is to spend about an hour or two every morning working on some drawings. This class is a little bit of a master class in drawing fruit and vegetables from your kitchen. If you don't have any fruit and vegetable, you can really draw anything you want, like your dog or a bowl or even the pencil that you're working with. So get your materials together and let's get started. Good girl. There's lots to learn about fruit. Like if you look at these 3 lemons, they're completely different from each other. Each one is a lemon, but they have different character, different shade of color. And that's my point of view about art in general, that art doesn't have to look exactly like itself. Your art can look different than your friend's art or your mom's art or your partner's art. And of course, a lemon is different from an apple. And a banana is different from those. So I just went to the kitchen and picked fruit that I had. One of our neighbors had dropped off these lemons a couple of days ago. Maybe you have fruit in your kitchen that you can pick up and use for this. But if you don't have fruit available to you, you can draw your fruit from your imagination, or you can draw something else, like a bowl, for instance, or something else that you have available to you right now. This demonstration is going to be done with fruit. Now, one of the reasons that I chose fruit is that artists over time have used fruit as their subject matter. This part of this demonstration is going to be a little bit of a stroll through a museum of art. My first piece that I'm sharing with you is this painting by Cézanne. And what I love about it is the hard black line around each piece of fruit. So you can see there's a lemon in there, there seems to be an apple in there, and if you look closely at it, you can see that there's shadow underneath and around the fruit, and this black line that pops that lush, rich color that he brings to his oil paintings in the fruit. And this fruit is kind of situated in what we would call artistically a tableau, but kind of like a setting. So he's got tablecloth, he's got a table, he has that urn, and you can see that his fruit is very fruit-like, right? It's very clear what that fruit is. So the next artist introduced here is Gauguin, and he painted art in the Pacific Islands, Tahiti specifically, and his fruit in this picture are mango, and I think there might be an apple in there too, which is interesting. He also has a lot of black line around his fruit to pop that rich, dense color out. And his setting includes those beautiful, amazingly contrasted flowers in the background. So if you look at the fruit is pretty fruity, and then the flowers maybe were batiqued on fabric or something, but anyway, he's got those flowers in the background. His setting includes the spoon and that little coffee pot and the flowers. He also has a tablecloth under. You can see a little bit of shadow in his work. And that little glint of white on that front mango, which we'll be talking about later, because that little glint of reflected light shows up in quite a few of these pieces. Here's Frida Kahlo's work, and I was thinking about Frida Kahlo last night. What I like about her work here is kind of a study in geometrics. So the art itself is this collection of circles. And it's also regional art. You can see there's a little bit of cactus in the background. She has this amazing contrast in the blue, the deep, deep blue in the back, and the paler yellow under the fruit. And then she sectioned off a piece of that orange. So art is about representing the piece, this lemon, this apple, but art can also include feelings. And in Frida Kahlo's life, part of what she was dealing with was her own health and her relationship to her own body. And when I look at this painting, knowing her history, I think she's showing you the inside of that orange, the same way she was contemplating the inside of her own body. And it's represented quite subtly in this piece, but I like it very much. So this next one, also amazingly lush color, is a Georgia O'Keeffe. And O'Keeffe is often known for her flower work, but this looks like a collection of apples, although some of them could be tomato. And one of the things I like about that piece is it looks like she's got the underside of the apple with this little black fringy piece that shows up at the bottom, and the shadow work around that, the dimple or the shadow in that middle range of three, looks like upside down apples, might be tomatoes across the top and also on the bottom. So I like her work. You can see the white glint in that work also, and much denser, bigger fruit with just a little bit of cloth under. This is Vincent van Gogh, who, we know from his sunflowers and Starry Night and his pictures of people, but I found this piece that is his work around flowers. What I like about this one, there's so much to like about it, it's amazing to me, is he also uses that black outline, and then he's done something remarkable with his background. So he's very representational with the fruit. You can see them. They look really clearly like pieces of fruit. But then he's got this amazing movement in the background, including that shadow, that pulsing of rhythm in his background. So his foreground, his subject work, is fruit, just like our subject work is going to be fruit. But then he took a complete departure in the background that I thought was pretty great. So moving from representational art into more modernism, this is a piece by Picasso. You can see I'm on a trend here because I'm trying to talk about these black outlines popping the color. And certainly in this Picasso piece, you have those round circles and his huge cuts of geometry here. He's got the apples in a tableau up on that stand. There's 4 of them and then 1 on the table. They're cut geometrically for reasons that made sense to him. I think he was exploring the tension of color, section, and a kind of cubist, minimalist work, but clearly fruit, right? So a couple of slides ago, we were looking at fruit that really looked like fruit. And in this particular case, this is fruit that represents fruit, right? And is kind of talking about a higher concept of maybe a color study or a shape study. So this is a family favorite. This is Paul Klee, and this might be a Japanese apple based on the color. I'm not exactly sure, but this is also like one big apple in the middle of a piece of paper, and I love it for that. This is a soft, cute, lush, poofy apple. It could be anything, but I think this little star shape at the bottom looks like that little apple star shape. It's got a little stem on top, and it's just such a welcoming, beautiful fruit. Now, does it look like this apple? No, not necessarily, but there's no denying that this is a beautiful piece of celebrating a piece of fruit. More modernism, this is Andy Warhol's silkscreen banana. No shadow, nothing but the banana. Actually. And I love it. I love its starkness, its clarity. It's just 2 colors. I'm imagining it as a silk screen. So a screen of yellow and it dries, and then the screen of black on top pops completely off that white background. And I love that work of just really going in and boldly representing the fruit, such as it is, and you can project why he did that, why he picked that. He's known for his graphic work, his Campbell soup can, for instance. So really looking at a thing, a subject for what it is, and then a projection into what it also might be. And this is Basquiat, and he's got, I love this piece for a million different reasons, but the middle flow of this piece is these plates of lemons or green apples, or they could be plums, I'm not sure, but there's such a peacefulness in the middle of this piece that just really speaks to me. And then in the upper corner, there's emotion in that person, right? So is he singing? You could project onto it, you could read into it. So you've got this dynamic energy in that upper corner. And then in the lower corner, there's this piece of domesticity where he's got the fork and spoon and cup and plate. And I'm just in love with that. The kind of play of the pastel colors against that very bold pop of yellow and black in the face. I just think this piece is a masterpiece. And I felt very inspired by it when I was pulling these pieces of art together to share how different people can approach fruit in their work. So moving from art, fine art, into more illustration, this is this artist's name is Roy McKee. He is an illustrator who worked with Dr. Seuss, and these are the apples from 10 Apples Up on Top. So I love that book. I love these apples. So these apples are a study of absolute simplicity. They're the apple shape, little kind of stem on top. Some of them are red all the way through. Some of them have that glint of white that we talked about. That's the shine picked up. They are just the most delightful and wonderful apples. And and I love the way he has them stacked kind of askew up on those animals. And then the last one that I'm going to share with you today is the Eric Carle Lonely Caterpillar apple. So he approaches his work differently. He often makes his own paper and then collages it into shapes. So in this particular one, we've got this collaged painted apple. He has that lovely glint of white that I was talking about. There's shadow around the stem and that dimpling, that remarkable apple dimpling. And then, of course, the caterpillar coming through. And he even did the little fringe that we were talking about earlier coming out the bottom of this piece that makes it undeniably an apple. So why talk about and show all these different artists? Well, part of it is just to understand that everybody approaches their work differently and that it's all okay. So how you choose to approach your art is on you. There's a lot of permission to have it be whatever it needs to be, to love it or hate it or learn from it as you're producing it, to learn how to sit with it and perfect it, and just find your comfort in your own creation, the way you want to do it, and use this time to explore and experiment. So from here, I'm going to move over to demonstrating kind of how to get started with the tools that I use to do my own art. So we're going to move over to the other part of my dining room table because I'm an artist that doesn't have a studio. We create studio space in our house on our dining room table every morning, and then we break it down when we're done with our work time because we eat at this table. So I don't have a formal studio. I have our dining room table, which is good enough for us, and I'm going to slide down to the other chair, and I'm going to walk you through my supplies. For this section, we're going to start to draw some fruit and really break it down into the shapes and sizes of fruit. So you want to start with some fruit that you might have in your kitchen. And if you don't have any fruit, you could pick something else. I've also sketched vegetables. They're actually really fun. Or if you don't have fruit and you don't have vegetables, you can use your imagination. So for this section, you're going to need a pencil. If you don't have a pencil, you can use a pen, an eraser, and sometimes they're at the bottom of the pencil already, and a Q-tip if you have one, and some paper. And you can use any kind of paper. I'm going to show you a pad, a Post-it, a piece of grocery bag, an envelope, just so that you can see that the paper is not the most important part. What we're really going to be doing here is drawing the fruit. So you can see here I have the tools that I need for this section, which are my fruit, and I have 4 lemons here that we got from our neighbor across the street whose lemons came into season. Each one is different from each other. And part of what's exciting for me about learning how to draw fruit is really learning the differences from one fruit to the next. In the 10 apples up on top, the fruit all look the same, and you can also draw fruit that way too, but I like the idea of working with their differences. I've got 2 grapefruit, one is a little bit orange and one is very yellow, 1 banana and an apple. And in my tools, I have this very thick and very soft artist pencil, a thinner pencil that might be like the pencil that you have at home. I don't have a mechanical pencil, I couldn't find one. 2 different kinds of erasers. One is the spongy kind that artists use, and then this one has a hard edge that is like the eraser that is probably at the end of the pencil that you're using right now. This is a shading tool. It's an artist shading tool, but you can also shade with a Q-tip, and I'm going to show you how to do that. And you can take a little piece of paper towel and roll it with into like a little piece like this, just a little bit of a piece like this. I'll show it on the camera. And you can shade with that as well. So clearing my surface, the first paper I'm going to start with is a drawing pad. It's made for drawing. It's going to be easier to draw with. And I'll start with this lemon. So when I look at this lemon, I see the stem on the end. It's got a little ridge here. It has this point that sticks out. It's got a little indentation here. And I'm going to want to show that when I draw that particular lemon. I like to start with that part that sticks out first, and then really kind of figure out what is the shape of this particular lemon. So it's kind of round. It's got the stem on the end. It's got a little bit of indentation. And see, it's really starting to look like a lemon. Now this lemon would be different from this lemon, so let's draw this one too. So this lemon has also kind of that half circle shape, but it's got a little point at the end there. It's somewhat smaller, leaner lemon, and it's got a different kind of stem at the end. It's got an indentation here too. Right, so now I've kind of got 2 different kinds of lemons. Here's a third lemon. I'm going to layer it behind this other lemon. It's also got that shape in the front. And it's a little bit rounder. It's got its little stem on the back. A little bit of shading there. So see, 3 different lemons. So the lemons line up differently on the page. And if you don't have artist paper like that, I just found some Post-its at home. You could draw a lemon on a Post-it too. So let's draw this one. Because really all that matters is that you're taking the time to draw. So now I've got a lemon on a Post-it. And when I want to hang up my drawings later, it's already got a glue on it. That makes it a little bit easier. So here's a little lemon on a Post-it, right? You could use what you've got. Piece of a paper bag. I'm going to rip it down a little bit. So some of you might have paper bags at home. They're actually fun to draw on. They have that, they really absorbed. It's kind of nice. So lemon on a piece of paper bag. So the lemon is a circular shape. It's got that little piece on the front. It's got the little bit of a stem on the end. And it's different from, let's say, an apple. So if I look at an apple, the apple is round, but it comes down more into a point at the bottom. It has these little fringes that we saw on the Eric Carle piece. It has that indentation, kind of like a dimple on top, and the stem comes out of that. So let's see, I got this round part of my apple, but then it comes down into that point. The fringe doesn't show. From the angle that I have, that little indentation is kind of beautiful with the stem coming up like that. I just love it. It's got the flecks of color and how the light hits it. like that. And a sense that it's kind of rounder here with some shading, right? So I'm starting to get an apple. Now, if I wanted to do an apple that kind of is an essence of an apple, but not this exact apple, kind of like the 10 apples up on top apple, I would have to look at that differently, right? So that apple kind of has a shape almost like a heart. Maybe I'll put the fringe on the bottom because I kind of like that. And the stem. So see, this is more like, looks like an apple, and this is more like, looks like an apple. Different kind of look, right? Different kind of look for the apple. And you can really start playing around with that when you start to color them in. Okay, the next one I'm going to look at is a banana. So we just were looking at these shapes that are kind of coming off of circles, but the banana is really much more of an arc. It's got a swoop shape to it. So looking at my banana, I'm going to start with the stem on that one. Looking at that swoop shape, and I'm going to erase this a little bit because I didn't like the way that looked. Erasing is fine. Kind of draw those lines in. So the banana has lines. It's got that little edge on the bottom. And now all of a sudden that's starting to look like a banana. So you can see apples, banana. There's lots of different ways that you could kind of play with these shapes. Grapefruit are a little harder only because they're basically circles. They look a lot like that Frida Kahlo painting where it was just circle, circle, circle like that. So I'm going to look at that grapefruit and try to figure out how am I going to make it understood that this is a grapefruit. So one of the things I'm noticing with the grapefruit is that where the stem attaches has like these little star-like edges to it. So I'm going to see if I put like a little circle there and those star-like edges will look more like a grapefruit. And there's a dimpling. There's like, it's almost like a spotted pattern. I don't know if you can see it, but this grapefruit is like covered with dots. So I put some of that in. And now you can see I have this grapefruit, okay? So this section was just how comfortable am I just even drawing these shapes. And in some of them, I like them a lot. I always like the lemons best because they're the fruit that I feel like I'm more comfortable with. But I really have shapes that I can work with. So this section, I'm going to use mostly oil pastels because that's what I had in my house. But you can use what you have in your house. So some examples might be pastels, markers, crayons, or even makeup that you can put on your finger and use to color in the shapes. So I'm going to start with those lemons that I drew and look at my pastels. So I have a couple of different shades of yellow that I'm working with here. And a little bit of green. And there's a couple of different ways to look at it. One is to really use that hard black background. And we talked about that in the paintings. So this particular lemon is really closer to that paler oil pastel color. This particular lemon is closer to that darker oil pastel color. So that's one of the things that makes lemons different from each other is how dense the color is. And then in addition to that, some of these lemons have green in them. So I pulled out a green oil pastel, and the stems have a kind of brown-like quality to them. So I pulled out a brown oil pastel. So let's think about coloring in. So you want to kind of work with the lines that you have, but you don't have to completely stay inside of them or stay true to them. They're just giving you the guidelines and help kind of define what you're doing. And so for this one, I'm starting with a really dense yellow. And look at that, it's starting to really look like a lemon, right? And this particular lemon has a band of green through the middle. I'm not sure how true to that I want to be, but I do want to put some shadow in. So I'm going to lay in some shadow here and here using my green pastel. And then I'm going to take that little bit of paper towel that I was talking to you about earlier that I kind of wadded up and kind kind of smooth out that green. So look at that. I've got some shade, I've got some popped up light pale yellow, and this lemon is starting to really look like a lemon now. So I'm gonna just clean this up a little bit, and now let's go to this lemon. So this lemon is darker. Actually, it's midway between the two. It's kind of dark on this side, and it's lighter on this side. So let me get the darker part done first. I'm gonna put my glasses back on because I can see better with them. And again, I'm working with those lines that I drew because I really do like that black outline, right? So I'm coloring in, and you can do this with your crayons. If you've got pastels, you can do what I'm doing with the pastels. I'm coloring in a little bit of this green, then I'm gonna lay a little bit of the pale color on top of that. Right, and for the shadow, maybe I'll put a little bit more green in there. And now I'm going to take a piece of Q-tip, and I'm going to start shading with that. So look at what the Q-tip does. It's a little bit more subtle. And I can go diagonally, right, like that. I can use my finger. I have to remember to wash my hands. And then maybe use the Q-tip to erase as well. So now I've got these two different lemons, this different look of kind of darker yellow one and a lighter one. Another thing that I talked about when we were doing the review of the artist's work was that they had harder black outlines. So I may want to go in like with this lemon and lay a harder black outline. Really let it pop off that page. See that contrast in color? That really pops that lemon out. I can think about how I feel about it. I could even start making the shadow with my finger. Look at that. Right? So that's a different way of drawing it. And let's just kind of do this one too. On this one, I think I'm going to layer both the light and the dark yellow just to see how that looks. And do some of the shadowing with just different tonal qualities of the yellow and see, hey, is this looking like a lemon? I think they're starting to look like a lemon. So what do you think? And then look at yours. I don't know what you're drawing, if you're drawing a lemon or not. Is it looking like a lemon to you? Are you happy with what your picture looks like? Do you like the way that you're using your color? You can also use the magic marker on the drawing side. So let's say I make my lemon like that, right? Stem on this side. And then I don't have colored markers. You might have them at home. But using that magic marker, I can then just fill in, and in that 10 apples up on top style, maybe I leave some of that glint. But look at how beautiful that sharp edge of the marker works, right? And now I have that kind of lemon too. So I drew the apples, right? Two different styles, a more painterly style of apple that would require some shading, then a more illustration style apple. So let's look at those two. So this apple, it's got some red qualities to it, right? And I want to leave room for the white, so I'm going to let the paper be part of the white. See, it's starting to pull together as an apple. It has like a little in this dimple. It's got like a little of this peach tone that comes through, which I really like. So this is kind of a lush, can I make it really kind of look like an apple, kind of an apple? And maybe I'll take some of the brown and create a little bit of a shadow down here. Looking at the stem. And it's starting to look like a more painterly form of an apple. But I can also do an apple, and I keep on calling them those 10 apples up on top apple, where I just want it really red. Right, with a little, I love that little white glint. So leave a little white glint. And maybe on this one, I go back in with the marker. And I'm like, there's my stem. There's my outside. And maybe I'll throw those fringe pieces onto the bottom. Just pick it up again with color. Really dense color. And look, so two different apples, right? One is a little bit more painterly, one is a little bit more like an illustration. Two apples, they're really cute. All right, let's move on to Mr. Banana. So this banana has brown spots all over it and a little bit of black. You remember that Andy Warhol banana was so stark yellow and so stark black. I'm not sure I'm going to be as stark as he was able to be, but let's see what happens with this banana. I may use my pencil a little bit too. The yellow color is definitely closer to this darker yellow shade. So I'm going to lay in this yellow color. And then depending how I want to deal with it, do I want to put some brown in? And I'm kind of deciding that I do, and really try to represent kind of the bruising on this banana. And then I might kind of pick it up a little bit with my pencil just to give it a little bit of life. And I'll do a little bit of smoothing of that pastel with my Q-tip, which is my tip of the day. Use a Q-tip. And look at that banana. I mean, that is a great banana if I do say so myself. I'm very happy with that banana. Very graphic, clear, cute, right? Bruised but not broken, like all of us sheltering in place. And then the last piece I'll do today in the drawing section is this grapefruit. And I have two grapefruits here, but I'm going to go with the pinker one. It was the original one I drew anyway, but that's where I'm going to go. So it's got a little hint of green in that star little area. I'm going to try to get that before I go in and really kind of pick up that peachy, yellowy color. My proportions are off a little bit because in real life, the grapefruit is much, much, much bigger than the apple. But on the page, the apple looks bigger than the grapefruit. In fact, this grapefruit looks a little bit like an orange because it's sitting next to that apple. It doesn't bother me all that much. It's starting to have the look and feel of a grapefruit. And maybe I want to smooth that color out too, since I'm having so much fun smoothing today. And I think on this one, I'm going to go back and do my pencil again, which I'm enjoying, is kind of just getting my shapes defined with my pencil. This one reminds me a little bit of that Paul Klee apple, this little grapefruit. It's just so poofy and happy. I like it a lot. So this is just drawing and coloring in, using those shapes that we drew with our pencils first, or if you had a pen, or if you used a marker, and then really playing with the density of the color that you would have either from a crayon or a marker or a colored pencil, really getting a drawing of your piece of fruit down. This next section, I'm going to use watercolor paint. And if you have some yourself, you can use it too. I'll show you what my watercolor set looks like. If you have other kinds of paint at home, you can use that, or you could just follow along with me. So in this particular section, you'll need brushes, water, paint, paper towel, Q-tips, the paper that you're going to use on the bottom, and some masking tape if you have it. So I'm going to start this section by showing you my brushes. I use these kinds of brushes. I'm going to put them here so that you can see them. They're a little broader and flatter, and I use them for the background brushing. And then for my detail work, I love this brush that's shaped like a U, and I have this one that I use for very detailed work. It's a very narrow brush, but you don't always have to use these artistic brushes. You can also use a kind of brush that's like the brush that comes in a watercolor set. It's softer, a broader brush, and actually it works really beautifully. So you don't have to have these more fancy artist tools. You can just use the brush you have. And if you don't have any brushes, but you do have paint, you can always use a Q-tip to brush with, or even your fingers. My watercolor set is super special. I love it. It kind of folds out like this. It has a lot of different colors available to me. It's just a very nice set. But you may have one that circles and only has 3 or 4 colors, and that's fine too. Just getting the color working makes sense. So artists look at how to work with their color in different ways, and some artists will set a palette of what they want their work to look like before they even get started working. So because we're running a kind of tight color story with lemons and bananas, you would, to kind of set your palette, what you might want to do, and I'm just kind of using this bowl here as my mixing bowl, you might say, well, this is kind of going to be my most lemony of lemon yellows, and then I'm going to go to like a deeper tone, and I love this for my green. And then brown. I'm going to use some of that brownish color from my stem. And it creates a very nice element in your piece to have your color palette out on the side. I don't do it all the time. Some people do it literally every time they paint. They set their palette out so that it's color keyed. You can decide what you want to do. In this particular style of drawing, I like to draw the outline with a pencil and then paint on the inside. So starting again with our lemons, I think I'll work that one again because I really like it. So I have my lemon shape, and I'm going to start with this darker tone of yellow and kind of start getting the colors in there. The thing with watercolor is it likes to dry a little bit, prefers to dry a little bit before you add the next layer in, but I'm going to try to go ahead and do it anyway. Right? And then a little bit of shading, so I'm going to use this brown tone that I talked about to shade the bottom. And then some of that paler yellow. What's cool about watercolor is the more water you use, the lighter the tone of the pigment. The less water you use, the denser the tone. So you can really kind of layer up your color, even just depending, not even by changing the color, just changing how much water. And that particular lemon didn't have a ton of green in it, so I'm not going to go after the green. It has a little bit of shading because it's mottled, so I may kind of want to pick up on some of that shading like that. And if for some reason I don't like the way that paint was working, I can always use that kind of an erasing tool with my paper towel and pull some of it off. So you see, I set a color palette and I painted a lemon to go along with it. Now the next thing I might want to do on that lemon is create a shadow. So when I'm looking at the lemons on my table, the shadows kind of follow the shape of the lemon. And in this case, I'm going to do purple tones as my shadow. And say, well, I want to follow that lemon shape. So I'm going to just kind of lay a shadow underneath the lemon. And that could be it. That could be your picture of a lemon, right? Look at that lemon. Beautiful lemon yellow lemon with its little purple shadow. And it's like, hey, I just did a lemon. Isn't that great? So let's say you don't have a pad, you just have that Post-it. Let's see how Post-it takes to paint. I like to do something new every time I do these that I've never done before. So I've never painted on a Post-it before. So oh my gosh, this is awesome. This is a great lemon on a Post-it. Look, lemon on a Post-it, right? Doesn't have to be artist paper. It can just be a Post-it. Then you can like peel it off and give it to somebody. Let's see. Oh, we did grocery bag. So I don't know that I'll be able to pull enough yellow to stand out against that brown, but let's see. And if I can't, we'll try something else. It works a little bit. This might have been better to draw with. Oh, but look at how sweet that is. Look. Lemon on a grocery bag, right? Doesn't have to be the most exciting thing. And if you're kind of going, oh, look at how great that is. Let's put in a little bit more of that more yellow. And let's go for that purple shadow. I don't know that I want shadow on this one. What I think I'm going to do on this one is do a sharp contrast around that yellow. So I'm going to go for, let's say, red this time. And just like, when we were looking at the modernists, it's not just the shape, right? It's that tension between the colors or that choice of a color. So, and in this case, not only that, but I have red and then a break and then yellow. And look at how great that looks. Right? That red really pops the yellow of the lemon out. It's just great, and it's on a grocery bag, but I think that's a great lemon. I really love that lemon. That worked out pretty good. So another thing you can do, and I tend to do this more with watercolor paper that I'd consider artist paper, is kind of tape it down. And I work on this piece of cardboard on my dining room table. I do all my work on my dining room table. I don't actually have a studio, and with shelter in place, I probably wouldn't be able to go to my studio anyway, even if I did have one. So I don't have one, so I work on the dining room table. And what I try to do is have a workstation that is portable, that I can kind of put it away at an end of a session, take it out every morning when I'm ready to do my work, and clean up, and then we can still eat at the table. So cleaning up, which is the next section that we're going to cover here, is part of setup, right? You have to kind of get everything set up, and then you have to know where it's going to go when you're done. So this thing I'm doing right now, I call taping down, and I use painter's tape from the hardware store. You don't have to use that. You can use regular masking tape, and you don't even have to do the step at all. But what I like about it is it creates a frame on the paper, and so it's kind of creates a dimension because you've got this extra frame. So I think for this one, I'm going to try to do a smaller banana. So let's see if I can make that happen. Okay, so here's the banana. I told you I like to draw my lines first. Not everybody that paints does it this way, but this is kind of my style. And I'm going to work with laying in some of the brown. In between drawing and painting, I wash my hands. So you have to remember to wash your hands always, but especially now because of this virus. And in general, you don't want to take whatever you've got on your hands, like the oil pastel can get kind of muddy on your hands, and then transfer it onto the paper when you're doing something else. So I'm putting in a little bit of this brown tone. We'll see how I feel about it when I'm done with my fine brush. And then I'm going to take a thicker brush. Usually you want to let things dry a little bit longer than this. I'm going to take this thicker brush and see what happens. So you can see there's a little bleed going on, but I think I might be able to work with it. And look at this banana. Oh my gosh, this banana really is starting to look good to me, right? So look at that. Now, part of this is that watercolor paper works really beautifully. So I found an envelope. Let's see if I can do a similar banana on an envelope without taping it down, okay? So here's the stem. And part of this is just kind of learning what the paper's going to do, right? Because you can get really frustrated if the paper's not going to do what you think it's going to do. Sometimes you can get a hole in the paper if you work really hard or press too hard. For me, sometimes if my paper's thin, I'll get the ridges of the my cardboard, which I don't like all that much, but sometimes I'm stuck with. And let's put a little bit of brown into this envelope banana. And you know, it's interesting. The envelope kind of is absorbing the pigment. It doesn't look too bad to me. So see, the paper doesn't have to be so precious, right? You can work with what you've got. You don't have to work with artist tools. They definitely make a difference. But really, it's just, what do I have? I've got an hour of time. I want to do some drawing and painting. What can I work with? And I'll even show you here if I wanted to. I don't even have paint, right? I just have a pencil, or I only have a marker. And I couldn't find any paint, and we can't go to the store. And sometimes your hardware store, believe it or not, can have some paint. But sometimes you can get there and even the hardware store doesn't have paint. This is just some old makeup. So you can color in with some makeup on your fingertip. And here's this beautiful little pink heart. And that's just like some old blush, right? So love bananas. This is not so bad, right? This is just on an envelope. So let's go to this banana here. And maybe I'll try to put this banana on a plate. So I brought a plate. I don't think I'm going to paint that plate exactly. I'm going to put the banana on the plate and say, what does a banana look like when it's on a plate? Well, there's plate behind the banana and there's plate in front of the banana. So I want to make sure that I can get that feel of plate in front of the banana and plate behind the banana, right? and then maybe put a ridge in it. Like, this doesn't have to be perfect. You're just kind of indicating that there's a plate there. So one of the things I loved was that Basquiat pink linen napkin that had the fork and the cup and the knife next to it. So I'm wondering if I can get like a beautiful pink plate here. That my banana is sitting on. Just an indicated pink plate. It doesn't have to be perfect. And in this case, it's like, it's a little red for me, so I'm gonna peel off some of my paper towel. Oh yeah, here's the pink coming through. Look at that. Just a little beautiful pink plate. I'm gonna just clean up my banana a little bit. Now I've got a banana on a pink plate, which I think is quite lovely, and maybe I'll do a bluish background behind it. So I'm looking at this blue, it's kind of moving into like a cornflower blue. And I'm going to paint some of that bluish. A little bit of a bluish background. Picked up the aqua by accident, but I can make it work. A little bit of a bluish background here behind my pink plate. And I think it might look better if there's like an indication of a line. So I'm going to do that. And see, so I've got a banana on a plate, right? Not bad. And the cool thing is when you pick up the tape, look at how great that is. Oh my God, it's so special, right? You've got a banana on a plate with this little white outline around it. Just a sweet little card. It could be a gift. It could be a bookmark. You could write the word banana here, or even use a stamp pad and stamp it out. So lots of different ways you can paint on lots of different pieces of paper. I've got my envelope, I have my lemon on a Post-it, this surprise of the day, brown paper bag lemon, and just a basic lemon with a shadow underneath it in my sketch pad. Reviewing your work. This next section is about reviewing your work and just taking a minute to see what you've produced and think about how you feel about it, and if you want to keep things or give them away, or how you want to move them to the next level. So there's lots of things you can do with your work once you've decided you like it. You can hang it up, you could give it as a gift, you could send it in a letter. If you look behind me, I have mine hanging on like a clothesline behind me, and depending on what I'm working on at any given time, I could have a wall of lemons. Last week I had a wall of flowers because I was working on flowers. Maybe I'd have bananas because I got bananas happening today. So you want to look at your work and decide what you liked and what you didn't like. And it's like a little review. So before you're done and you're ready to start your cleanup, you want to do a little bit of a review. This is a piece that I loved when I first did it. It was the first time I tried that bold background behind the yellow lemon. And I decided to make it into a little thank you card. And I did one similar to this. So for my neighbor that gave us the lemons that I'm using for this demonstration, I made her a little thank you lemon card with one of the lemons that I painted. And she wrote back and said, thank you for the bookmark. So she's using the lemon card like a bookmark. So it's a nice gift that you can give to somebody. And here's one. This has the color palette on it. It's kind of beautiful. Also has a bookmark feel to it. I could cut it here and just be just the lemon, or I can keep the palette as part of it. This is like a study of lemons. I've got 3 different ways of doing lemons all on the same page. I did that a little bit this morning when I was showing you how the pieces go together. Kind of like that one. This is from the other day when I was just getting down the lemon and banana shape. And what's funny about this banana is this is what the banana, my model, looked like 2 days ago. It was all yellow, and now it's starting to get brown. By tomorrow, I'm going to have to eat it or bake it in bread because the bananas don't last as long as the lemons do. And here's a cool lemon that I love. That's painted. Let's see what else I did today. Here are those bright lemons that we put together on one page. Those are kind of interesting. I love this. So I have to figure out, I could actually, like an Eric Carle, I could cut it out and collage it onto something else. I like this banana too. The apples, this is my favorite apple rather than this one. And my lemon painting. This was kind of cool, the grocery store lemon and the grocery bag paper. I really like this one actually quite a lot. And if you wanted to write somebody a letter or put this in a sketch pad, you can start writing underneath it. That would be good. Here's another one in that finding the frame piece. I was playing around with trying to put the fruit on those beautiful pink plates. So I have quite a few of these experiments of fruit on plates, right? So here they are. So I'm just experimenting, and I can watch my own progress and how my fruits on plates are doing. So you can decide you might want to send them to somebody in the mail, put them on the refrigerator, use the leftover blue tape, tape them to the wall, use a binder clip. This Post-it has its own tape built in. So you don't have to love them all. I suggest keeping everything for a couple of days and then making a decision about what you want to keep as your final. And then deciding what you want to do with it next. And I think I'll probably do a video on collaging, and I might use some of these lemons to collage them together. So show you how to cut them out and reuse them, repurpose them later. So don't be so quick to part with them, because you never know when you're going to fall in love with your lemon a couple of days later, even if you didn't like it the first day. Don't forget to wash your hands before you put away your tools and after you put away your tools. Every day after my drawing time, and I try to draw every morning from about 8 in the morning to 10 in the morning. It's how I start my day. But I know that I have to get that table cleared off, because we may need to work at the table for later in the day, and certainly we'd like to eat our dinner at the table. So I have to get my supplies all picked up and put away and ready to go. You have to wash your brushes and make sure the pigment comes out of it. You have to put your tools away, you have to empty your water dishes, and make sure that you wash your hands. Am I still running? Survival tips for unsettled times. Okay, let me try that again. I don't know what the third thing is. What's the third thing? So, oh, the dog. This thing we're this, on this thing we're that. Survival tips for what? Oh, that's not working. I hope. Oh! For survival tips for unsettled times. Unsettled times. So I hope you like this video, our very first survival tips for unsettled times. Survival tips for unsettled times. So thanks for watching our very first video in survival tips for unsettled times. We're sheltered in place right now, and you may be too. And one of the things we thought about was, wouldn't it be fun to just come up with a fun group of videos for things that we're already doing and things that we know how to do that we could share with you to give you a break, or teach you something, or give your kids something to look at, but just something fun to do during these difficult times. If you like this video, feel free to give us a like. You can subscribe. Oh, or hit the notification bell so we can tell you when we have our next video loading up. You can find us on a lot of different social platforms. We'll have the information underneath the video, so feel free to look down there and check it out, and find us on Facebook, Instagram, or other social platforms. We'll see you soon. Bye.